joining the meeting. I think this is an exciting project moving forward, so I look forward to the presentation from the applicant and staff and hearing any questions from the community. So thank you for being here.
Great, thank you. Okay. So just to kind of go over the agenda for tonight's meeting, how it's going to go, this is tonight I'm just going to start with kind of a quick overview of what the comprehensive plan is, just so that we're kind of all on the same page as to what we're looking at. And then I'm going to go into kind of some existing conditions for the site that we're talking about tonight. And then the applicant's going to present, the plan amendment proposal, and then we'll kind of discuss some staff considerations and the anticipated timeline for this plan amendment. So kind of just to provide a sense of where this project is in terms of the development process, this diagram kind of illustrates the cyclical nature of land development within the county. So this is being processed concurrently with the rezoning, but the first step is to analyze the plan amendment before the rezoning can be determined. And so the comprehensive plan and the zoning / entitlement process are kind of the first steps in this kind of years-long process. So again, to reiterate, we're kind of still in the very beginning stages of this proposal. And then, so just to give an overview of what the comprehensive plan is, the comprehensive plan is a guide for decision-making about the built and natural environment, which reflects the community's long-term land use vision for the future. So the purpose of the comprehensive plan is really to kind of manage the growth and development, as well as balance the preservation of the other resources, such as environmental and heritage resources. And so, growth brings both benefits and challenges in terms of land use and housing and transportation. So this is kind of where we look at that all. And so the plan is also a legally required document within the Commonwealth of Virginia. So every county or locality must have one. However, it is important to note that the plan amendment does provide recommendations, and it's not law like the zoning ordinance. And we'll kind of go over between the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance in the next slide. But the recommendations in the comprehensive plan are used by the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, county staff. We use them, the community as the common basis for decision-making on the land use applications. And it is a living document, and changes to it are called amendments, such as this plan amendment. And then, so as I noted earlier, the plan is guide, it's not law, and it does provide recommendations about land use, transportation, environment, and other topics generally. So the plan is implemented through the zoning, which is law, and there are more specific standards that can be found, such as regulations for setbacks, open space, building height, and explicit uses. And so changes to the zoning map are requested through the redevelopment process. And during that process, proposals are evaluated with conformance with the recommendations in the comprehensive plan. And so, so now going to the site that we're looking at tonight, which is the Cornerstones plan amendment. This plan amendment is at the site-specific level, and it's looking at these two parcels within the Sully Supervisor District, and it's located on the northern side of Route 50 off West Ox Road ramp to the east. So the property doesn't have any existing development on the 1.12 acres of land. And then just to provide some context to where we are and what's around it, zooming in around the site, the first image is the view from the ramp frontage looking directly at the site coming off West Ox Road ramp. The second image on the top right is a little further west on Route 50, looking back at the site where the vegetated trees are right there. And then the bottom image to the right is from the office parking lot view looking at the proposed entrance. So kind of giving a 360 view of the site. And then zooming out, the site is half a mile from the Harris Teeter, and then it's also 0.6 miles from the Fairfax Town Center. And then looking at what's in the adopted comprehensive plan, The property is planned within the Fairfax Center area, which and specifically outside of the core. And it's specifically land unit C2, which is highlighted there in light blue. The adopted comprehensive plan text for the subject property does recommend residential use at 2 dwelling units per acre at the baseline plan. And then the overlay option is for office use up to 0.25 FAR. And then just to note that the land unit C2, which is where the subject site is planned for, is generally planned for office use. And then overview of what the board authorized this comprehensive plan for. So the board authorized this comprehensive plan amendment on February 22nd of 2022. The board requested that staff consider affordable housing at a density of up to 35 dwelling units per acre as an alternative use on the property, which is owned by Fairfax County Redevelopment and Housing Authority. It was also noted within the board authorization that a noise impact study will be a key component to the review of the plan amendment. And now I'm going to pass it over to the applicants to provide an overview on the plan amendment proposal.
Hi, I'll go ahead and start. My name is Lynn Strobel. I'm with the law firm of Walsh Colucci, and we're here this evening just to talk about what we're proposing on this property, which is kind of the next step. You know, the first step here is to go through the plan amendment process, and then after that, we would be processing a rezoning application. And I represent Cornerstones, and we also have on the line Paul Brown, who I believe is here. And I'm not sure if Carrie Wilson is on the phone. Did Carrie make the call?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so I don't hear her, but if we could go to the first slide, and we're just going to talk just in the next slide will be fine. So Cornerstones, if you're not familiar with it, has been around for a good number of years, and they work with, Fairfax County to ensure that all of those who live in Fairfax County are their needs are being met. And so the Cornerstones promote stability, empowerment, and hope through support, advocacy, and community building for individuals and families in need. So really trying to make sure, like I say, that everyone who lives in Fairfax County has the support that they need. We go to the next slide. So what we're proposing, and this again will be in the second phase of this, is an opportunity for supportive housing. And there really is a need for individuals in Fairfax County who are chronically homeless. And the way that we would be addressing that issue is to provide permanent supportive housing. And what that means is that this would be housing that's not only a place to live, but really provides what I'm just going to, generally call wraparound services. There would be counseling and, financial literacy that would be taught to individuals who live here, and really trying to offer them a stable place to live while hopefully letting them work towards self-sufficiency. So if we could go to the next slide. And we're going to talk a little bit about the property. Again, it's been discussed by Leah. And before I do that, Paul, I know you've worked with Cornerstones maybe longer than I have. Was there anything you wanted to add to that description of Cornerstones?
I don't think so, except that they are a longstanding nonprofit in the community. Were formerly known as Reston Interfaith Housing, founded more than 50 years ago. They provide permanent housing for low and moderate income residents in the county. The site you see here is currently wooded, but it was formerly the site of a gas station,
Right.
and was acquired by during the reconfiguration of the intersection of West Ox Road and Route 50.
Yeah.
So it's anyway. Next
So
slide.
and Paul is absolutely right. This property was acquired by Fairfax County as part of its efforts to improve this intersection, but it has since been conveyed to the Fairfax County Redevelopment and Housing Authority. And Cornerstones has worked with the Housing Authority in an effort to see how this property could be developed in a positive way to, again, help individuals in Fairfax County at low incomes. So the property itself, as was described by Leah, it's two parcels right now, and those parcels together contain a little bit over an acre. They are zoned R1 and C8. So R1 is a residential district, C8 is a commercial district. As Paul mentioned, it was formerly a gas station. What Cornerstones proposes is a rezoning to what's called PDH 30, or Planned Development Housing. And what that would allow, if we could go to the next slide, what that would allow would be the development of a single building on this site, a multifamily building that would have surface parking, and it would have 33 independent housing units. Excuse me. For those for those of low income. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And the applicant, as I mentioned, would pursue this rezoning, after the comprehensive plan would potentially be amended to permit it, because the zoning would then be in compliance with those plan recommendations. And if we go to the next slide, this just gives you a perspective of what the building would look like. We would design this as a very attractive building. It would be 3 stories in height. It looks very much like probably a lot of other multifamily buildings in Fairfax County. It would have masonry materials. It has balconies. We would have a patio at the back so that people could, the residents here would have an opportunity to gather outside. And as I mentioned, there would be coverage here by staff 24/7. So there would be someone here at the building to be able to provide assistance as needed. There also, as I mentioned, there would be counseling sessions and other opportunities to get people back on their feet for self-sufficiency. So I don't think that, and I think that may be our last slide that we have. This just tells you a little bit about what I just said. That would be 24-hour coverage. It's on-site property management. There would be care management and partner services. So if we go to the next slide, as I mentioned, it would require a rezoning. We were hoping to get to hearings in May. I'm not sure if we're still on track for that, but that's what we are working toward in order to make sure that we have financing resources available to make this project come into reality. And I think that may be our last slide. Is that our last slide, Leah?
It is. Thanks,
Yeah.
Lynn.
So I'd be happy to answer any questions about that. And again, I think we've spent a lot of time on the design to make sure it's a very attractive building with open space and a nice living environment for the individuals who would be here. Thank you.
Oh, you have a hand up.
Hi, I was wondering, the 34 units that are there, is it the person that lives there, are they permanently going to be there? Or is this something where they rotate people as somebody goes through the rehabilitation or the, the need?
My understanding, and Paul can correct me, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, I think that they can stay there as long as they need services. Go ahead, Paul, sorry.
That's right. It is expected to be permanent supportive housing, so that there's no expiration date. They can live there as long as they wish to. So,
and I should mention too that this would be for primarily single individuals. So we really anticipate it would be one individual per room, if you will.
That's correct. They are expected to be quite small units, with generous common areas where the services can be provided. But this is a atypical multifamily development in that it will be entirely very small one-bedroom units.
So, do the people working there have a job that they go to every day, or how are they going to get around transportation? I guess is the question.
That's a very fair question. So, Carrie, actually, she sent a text a little bit ago. I don't know she's going to be able to join us, but she has great expertise with working with this population. We expect that the folks who live at these apartments would be, some might have jobs, though many might not. We expect that some might have cars, but most probably would not and would avail themselves of public transportation. As Leah said, the Harris Teeter is in walking distance. There is bus service along Route 50, and we have been talking or heard feedback from the planning department about how the walking routes would be arranged and site planning issues related to that. But we do expect that most people would use public transportation. I seem to have a very crackly connection. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, you're okay.
Mm-hmm. But we can
All
hear
right,
you for the
thank
most
you.
part.
I have a question. How high is this building going to be? Because that acreage is not very much. I walk by it every day, and your picture looks like it's going to.
The
It's
building
very
height would
deceptive
be
because that's not exactly how big 1.3 acres would be or whatever it is. When you put even the two things together, that's not big. With all the parking
Right.
you're planning, and
It's a relatively small building. The building height
it's
is
a
approximately
relatively small
34
slot.
feet. I'm sorry?
It's a relatively small plot.
Yes.
So you're going to have to go high because you're not, unless you're going to build barracks for these barrack type building that we're going to have here. That's what it sounds like. With one room, I don't see how you're going to be able to do it. Fit it into that spot.
The building height would be approximately 34 feet, and the building size is about 27,000 square feet. And you're right, it's not a large site, but it's not a large building. But we do think it will be sufficient to serve the needs of the individuals who will be there. So it provides a very small apartment.
What's the crime rate that comes with these kind of people? You
I'm
guys
sorry?
have done this before. There's got to be statistics. And where do we go to validate these statistics? What's the crime rate going to be?
The crime
What has that been
rate,
tradition? Yes. Because these are transient, they're drug users, that's what you want. I know it, yeah. Let's fix. And what is the crime rate that goes along with a building like this? There's one near Fort Belvoir. That crime rate's high down there.
Bring it in.
And so we're gonna, these people are gonna be bringing in crime. How much crime do they bring in? What's your projection?
I don't know if I can speak to that accurately, but what I will say is that it's not meant to be transient housing. This is an opportunity for individuals to have stability in a very supportive setting. And I think that they are, well monitored in this setting. I don't know what crime statistics are, but I can certainly check with Carrie and we can get back to you about that.
Yeah, I think
Paul,
that
don't
needs
know
to
if
be
you want-
part of the discussion because this is, and the other thing
Well,
is,
I would emphasize.
yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I would emphasize that this is atypical housing in that there will be 24-hour attendance. There will be somebody available to both provide services and support for the residents, but also to answer the phone. So Cornerstones prides itself on being a good neighbor, and so the property management staff on site are both there for the residents and also for the neighbors to contact. So
Okay, then what's the staff ratio then? What's the staff ratio to people that are going to live there? You got 36 people allegedly, and then maybe more if they're married. What's the staff going to be? How big's the staff going to be to support that?
Well, as I said, we expect there would be at least one staff person there 24 hours a day. During daytime hours, there would be more staff providing direct services to the residents. I don't know exactly how many people that would be, but it would be additional staff during the day to provide those services.
What's going to keep them from the liquor store that's right down the road? There's a Harris Teeter, but there's a liquor store too that's right next to the Harris Teeter. Have we brought that in consideration too?
Again, I'm going to have Carrie answer those questions, but I don't think, I suspect that they have a zero tolerance policy for, alcohol. And I think that this will be a facility that's strictly monitored.
By one person for 36?
Well, they have additional people who are there during the day providing services.
During the day. Well, what about at night?
Lockdown?
No.
Oh,
Again, I'm sorry that Carrie is not on the phone with us. I
Yeah.
know she expected to be here. She expected that she would be here. But we can get her to a similar meeting like this, and we can answer those questions.
All right, thank you.
I have a quick question as well regarding like an application process as far as these folks coming in. What are we doing to make sure we're not having, or is there a process to weed out any kind of sex offenders or violent criminal history of folks, or is there that kind of application process that you guys are vetting these folks?
So these are, of course, these are folks who need extra supports. So understanding that and that Cornerstone's mission is to help support people who have trouble staying housed. So understanding that, yes, there is expected to be a background check on residents. So that's just good management. And so I think you can count on that.
And has Carrie joined us? I see her in the, I think she may be on the phone, but is muted.
Hi, everybody. I apologize. I was with my mom and she had fallen, so I've just gotten on the phone and I am driving, but I'm listening, and if I can answer anything, I'm delighted to. Thank you.
Carrie, can you help us understand the application process for the residents that would be coming to this building, to this home?
Yes, it's for the intended use, which is for the supportive housing. The HUD determines the application in Fairfax County Housing Authority, and it does involve a review of credit and criminal background checks and other issues in terms of determining eligibility. Mostly we'll be looking at income and other elements about what makes a good resident. So there's a full screening and application process, meeting with the individuals who will make this home and making sure that this program and this housing option is good for them.
And the question, I think, Carrie, was whether you would be screening for sex offenders and violent offenders. And it sounds like
Yes.
that would be part of the screening process.
Yes, HUD and the funding we will utilize do not allow for felony convictions for people to live in the housing with certain felony convictions of those type.
And I think,
Okay.
Carrie, the other question that we had that I couldn't really answer is that I assume that you have a no tolerance policy for alcohol, but the concern would be that individuals in this building would buy alcohol at the Harris Teeter or, have drugs and perhaps not be good neighbors. So maybe you could touch on that just briefly.
In programs like this, we don't screen for, someone who's going to come home into their own home, and if they are allowed to have alcohol if they're a legal age. I have to acknowledge that, but what we have on site, as you all know, is 24/7 resident services and on-site case management referrals for people who might come in that have substance use disorders, in which case we would be working with people to monitor that and sort of monitor behavior. But we would follow all regular laws and regulations in terms of prohibition of illegal drugs and substances.
And do you have any sense of the crime rate associated with other facilities that you have operated?
Yeah, in general, and I think this type of supportive housing is just that, where we are bringing people in who have had chronic challenges. The crime against individuals of this nature is usually they are victims themselves. When we bring people into permanent housing, they're able to get the supports they need, and permanent supportive housing like this actually reduces nuisance crime and other things that you see in neighborhoods when you have people who are on the street who don't have a place to go and don't have regular supports.
Thank you, Carrie. I just wanted to see if we could answer some of those questions that people had. So I'm sure there are other questions.
Out on late and I'm driving, so I know I'm not doing it justice. I'm happy to follow up.
No, you're doing great. Thank you.
I think Amy is next.
Yes, hi, thank you. My name is Amy Lemieux. I am actually the HOA president for Fair Oaks Estates, which is probably the neighborhood that is closest to this redevelopment. We are about not even a quarter mile up the road from on West Ox Road. And my first question is the question about how the applicants are selected, but my first question actually is, why was there not an outreach to the neighborhoods that are most impacted by this? We only heard about it through a Nextdoor, and I was thinking that in previous things where they've had the development of this sort, there's been an outreach to the closest neighborhoods, and that was not done. So I thought that that was probably a lack of concern on the part of the county, that they should have reached out to the neighborhoods to give us a little bit more, because we have not been able, as the president of the HOA, I've not been able to let the people know in my neighborhood about it in a timely manner. So I think that I'm going to try to represent the folks in my neighborhood as well as I can, but I think that it was a definite flaw in the plan to not reach out to the neighborhoods to let people know of what was going on. The second thing that I have a question about is, in general, do you have an idea of how many homeless are in Fairfax County? I assume that these folks that are coming in that need this permanent supportive housing are going to be drawn on from Fairfax County? Or is are you going to be bringing in people from outside of Fairfax County? Is this specifically meant to deal with just the homeless situation in Fairfax County and the people who need help here in Fairfax County?
Yeah, Amy, thank you for your question. My name is Graham. I work with Leah in the Department of Planning and Development. I'm happy to take the first part of your question about kind of just the notification, then maybe I could turn it over to Cornerstones with regards to the second question about homeless population. So if we did send out about 2,500 mailers for this particular meeting. If your neighborhood was not included in that, do send us an email because we'd want to get you notified for the next one, as well as for the hearings. So I'm happy to reach out to your HOA and fill them in, so to speak. So I'm happy to work with you on that. I don't know, Lynn or Carrie or Paul, if y'all have a statistic in mind in particular for homeless and where this facility is drawing their applicants from.
And
Carrie, excuse me, Graham, who do you work? You work for the county?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I work for the Department of Planning and Development.
Where am I sending my email to ask for that information?
Yeah, I'll put my email address in the chat.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
And Carrie can interrupt me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that individuals living here would be from Fairfax County. Is that correct, Carrie?
Yes, everyone would be from Fairfax County. And this is not a shelter, not a program for homeless individuals. This is supportive housing. And so it will operate a little bit differently than what you see in a shelter program. I can share numbers about the homeless population in Fairfax County. We've reduced it by more than half, and mostly by investing, getting people into housing, preventing people from becoming homeless, and ensuring that where there are that people need, that we can offer not just housing, but these, again, regular on-site supports to help people really gain, self-sufficiency in their housing and get off the street.
So speaking to that, Carrie, thank you very much. What specific services are you talking about when you say you're providing them with services? What are those specific services you're talking about that they're being provided with?
In a typical program like this, we will have not only on-site case management with, master's level social workers, but also if residents need that, to ensure that there are other public health nurse or other services such as AA meetings or substance abuse counseling, if that is what the residents need. We also link to help for those that can, getting them back into the workforce, earning, so we'll have those types of services, and then just general resident services that are on site, that they will identify. But it's social services, it's access to any county services, including, transporting people as needed to programs, and then any on-site resident services that they lead themselves, clubs, hobbies, interests, things like that.
Thank you.
Next is Hermione and then William.
Hi, this is Harmony with Western Fairfax Christian Ministries. We know that the need for affordable housing is great, and I just want to voice our support for Carrie and for Cornerstones in this endeavor, and also our support to assist with providing food services and other safety net services for the families who will live in this affordable housing unit should this be approved. Thank you so much.
Great. Then William, then Joshua.
Yeah, hey, I just wanted to ask, I'm listening to the conversation. Is this a homeless shelter or a medical treatment facility? Is this for a homeless shelter for people who need medical treatment facility? I mean, it's what exactly are we selling? You're selling homelessness, but you're talking about having the staff that you need because these people are drug addicted or have some type of victim of something we don't know about. Or you say they're residents, but how would we know that they're residents? What are we trying? Is it for homeless people or is it for a medical treatment facility?
So this is a facility that will provide supportive housing for individuals with disabilities or people who have, yes, experienced homelessness, but it is not a shelter. Every resident will have a signed lease agreement that they are responsible and must pay a portion of the rent and follow the rules as you would in any apartment building. And it's just that, yes, some individuals, we expect there will be elderly individuals when we look at the population who need permanent supportive housing. These are largely people who are living that are social services disability income, which does not bring in enough to be able to afford an apartment in Fairfax County. So when you
the area. Oh,
yeah,
excuse me.
I'm sorry.
The area that we're talking about, there's probably 5,000 housing units, apartment complexes within a mile. You go towards on the other side of Safeway, there's at least 2,000 housing units there. You go down the road on Monument Drive, there's another 1,000 there. You go over to where the Harris Teeter is, there's another 1,000 there, or I don't know, maybe 250. So why are we not housing them there? Why are we not trying to go through vendors to provide this service of established housing areas? Because that lot is tiny. It's not big. You're gonna have to put a tall building there. It's gonna ruin the ambience of that intersection. There's a lot of negatives to this, not many positives. What am I missing?
Well, I think, Carrie, if I'm not mistaken, individuals that you will be serving cannot afford to live in those market apartments. I think
we pay for housing already for people like that, don't we?
Yes.
Doesn't the government do that?
Well, there are some programs for that, but it's not meeting the need. I think that there's still, my understanding, Carrie, is that there still is a need for this type of housing for individuals who cannot afford market housing, anything close to market housing. So that's really what this is trying to achieve, is to help those individuals who perhaps need it the most. And I don't know, you can probably speak to that more eloquently than I can, Carrie.
I think that's exactly right, Lynn, in terms of the numbers at Fairfax County. There are thousands, tens of thousands of individuals who cannot afford to pay the market rent on these units. We have a limited number of subsidies. In this apartment, we will be able to provide subsidy and rent support to help people who are living on, frankly, incomes of $800 a month to $1,200 a month. They're receiving Social Security. People that haven't been able to work, and again, particularly the elderly. And I think we all understand an average one-bedroom apartment in this area is more than $2,000 a month, $1,800 to $2,000 a month. So that's what we're trying to do here in a very specific place. And we are providing perhaps more on-site supports to address some of the questions that I appreciated Harmony Taddeo from Western Fairfax Christian Ministries, again, a partner who will help us with some of the supportive services. Cornerstones has been doing this and providing housing for people for 50-some years. We have a scattered site program with townhomes and condos with people like this who move into those homes and are very successful in their housing. And it gives them that time-limited support where they can stay, make a home, address any issues that they have. And that's really what we're trying to do here. It probably will not work in some of the apartments that you've talked about. We've looked at some structure around set up to support this.
My last question.
I think too, you also, if I could just address your question about the size of the building, as I mentioned, the building height is approximately 34 feet. And I would say that in the R1 district, a single family detached home can be up to 35 feet. So, I mean, I don't think this is a large structure that is going to have an impact really on this corner. There's an office building next to this. So I just want to give some assurances that it's not a very tall building. It's about 34 feet in height.
William, you're on mute.
So I live in a townhome that's 34 feet, and it's on half of an acre. You're talking about putting 35 people on 1.3 acres. It's going to be higher than 34 feet. My home alone, we've got 6 or 8 rooms in it, so that 6 or 8 people could live there. And I just don't think the plan is practical for that spot. The other thing is, lastly, I know other people have questions. Do we have legitimate sites that are like this that you guys have put together and run a listing of them so we could see how successful they were? So we know what kind of impact it does have on this and the community, and not just what you're saying it has, what it has on the community, where we do some research to get a good idea of what it is you're trying to do. Thank you. That was a question. Is there any, can we provide the name of other places like this? More than one?
Well, that is a challenge, because there are frankly not many places like this, because it is difficult to do, and so it's difficult because to arrange the resources necessary to provide the services for the population. It is not frequently done. I believe that there is a county-owned community in South Fairfax County called Monblock House. That's about all I know about that. It is county-owned, but Cornerstones does not own a community, similar community. Cornerstones owns what you might call traditional garden apartments in Reston.
Next is going to be Joshua and then Amy.
Oh, good evening. Yeah, my name is Joshua Booth, and I'm with Yimbys of Nova, Yimbys of Northern Virginia, and I'm really glad that you're pursuing this project. You know, the housing situation in Fairfax County is so difficult. I can't imagine how it is for people who have difficult, personal lives. And I think it's fantastic to get these people back on their feet so they can be contributing members of society. I mean, for a while there were like a family in tents near me, and I mean, I don't know what their situation was, but I think people should have an opportunity if they so they can have a place to live rather than being forced to live out in tents. And I live next to the Lincolnia Senior Center, which is often used as a hypothermia shelter. And I think it's great that the county tries to look out for people and tries to give them supportive services, at least while they're at different facilities. And I think this kind of facility sounds like it'll do an excellent job. Thank you.
Next is Amy and then Raga.
Yeah, hi, it's me again. I just want to have some clarification. You keep talking about families, but it sounds to me like these are just 1-bedroom type apartments. So is it really going to be families, or is it going to be just individuals? Are we talking about 35 people living there? Or are we talking about possibility of more than 35 people living there?
So there, we refer to, and apologize if we talk about families, and because under federal law we can't actually discriminate against people on basis of family status, familial status. So the owner, I think, may not be able to prevent someone who had a child from moving in. However, the fact that the community will only have small 1-bedroom units will naturally we think prevent it from having families living there. It'll be households, most often one person, and that's a result of the physical structure with very small one-bedroom units. But we can't, as I understand it, discriminate against people based on their family status.
Thank you, Paul. I also wanted to say that I think in general that I certainly don't want to impart the idea that we don't have that our neighborhood does not have empathy for these folks' situation, but I would like to make sure that you would understand our concerns in that if you are bringing in people who have substance abuse issues or who have had reasons for being homeless in the past based on those issues or mental health issues, you can certainly understand our concern in our neighborhood with hundreds of children and hundreds of houses that are within a quarter of a mile of walking distance, very easily accessed, that we would certainly have a concern for this sort of situation, and that we would certainly have questions moving forward if this does indeed get approved by the county, not only to the fact that it is possibly going to be not really a good fit for this teeny tiny 1 acre property, but there is definitely a concern. So it's not, please don't interpret it as a lack of empathy for the situation that these folks are finding themselves in, but I do think that you do need to be aware of our need to have our questions answered, because there is a concern bringing folks into this area, because like you said, this is not something that is done in Fairfax County. You don't have a whole lot of other options to show us. So this is kind of a new process for people, and we're going to have to wrap our minds around it. And I think that I just wanted to make sure that you have an understanding that we really need to be kept in the loop in order to get the area on board, or get the people who are in the area on board with the concept of what you're trying to develop here. That's all. I just wanted to clarify that.
Amy,
thank you
so much. That I appreciate that opportunity, and I think that's what this meeting and others we will have are trying to address those questions. I will say, I do want to say that permanent supportive housing, what we're talking about here, which is housing that is subsidized, is a national model with proven benefits, and it is, so the model that we're using is structured after what is done in every county, every community across the United States when they've been addressing the cost of housing or the needs for special needs housing. Fairfax County has a limited number, and that's what Paul was discussing, and that's why this is so important and why there is such a need. There are about 300 individuals in Fairfax County today who could use this type of housing with the supports. And again, when you see this in Monlock Place is one of them. There are a number of the programs that we run for both families and individuals in neighborhoods actually have some of the same elements. So we're very familiar with providing this kind of support so that the program fits in the neighborhood and that we're available for to address your concerns as we go forward. And we can provide some other examples for you.
Indeed, and I would just add that I think, as William pointed out, that the county does provide support for formerly homeless or people who have experienced homelessness in apartments throughout the county. We think that the strong advantage here is that in a setting like this, Cornerstones is able to provide 24-hour, 7-day-a-week service and monitoring. And so we think that it allows greater support for the resident and allows the community to be a better neighbor. So we think that this is entirely positive. But we certainly appreciate your concern and would not question your empathy. And so thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
Great. And then I'm going to let Raga go, and then I'm going to just, with due of time, I'm going to finish the presentation, and then we'll go back to questions. So everyone keep your hands raised if we don't get to you. I see about 4 other hands raised after Raga. So Raga, go ahead and speak, and then I'll go back to finish the presentation and then go back to speakers.
Hi, all. My name is Raga Abdallah. I'm just one of the community members. It's just as Amy pointed about the concern being with kids. It just doesn't give us any clear view about the type of community will be in that building. And we have a couple of those subsidized housing in the area where we never heard of a special, they need a special or certain type of services or monitoring. Is it something, we understand all type of people. We are not criticizing anything. It's just a concern, and for us just to be aware of the neighborhood and who's living there. So is it a senior home or is it going to serve as a shelter, or is it we just need a clear view of who's going to be a resident in there without getting into anybody's business, but we just need to know what type of services and why you when you emphasize on those services without mentioning what type of services, that makes us concerned more. Are you assuming that's going to be a need? Why you need to monitor the residency? We just kind of don't understand. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I'll just start. The housing, this is housing, and everybody there, again, will have a lease and will be required to, comply with the lease. That is one, or as Paul said, if a family was admitted, it is unlikely. That's one person living in the unit where we know the residents and know their concerns. Permanent supportive housing is a model that allows us to address, yes, people that have been chronically homeless, mostly because they haven't been in a home. They've been living on the streets or have had issues that make them more fragile and more vulnerable. So being able to bring them into home and have, again, on-site case management services that you might think of in, an assisted living facility, for example. But it is not a homeless shelter. These will be largely single men and women who have disabilities. Knowing the population in Fairfax County, we have seen an increase in folks who are older, who just need that care, who might have other regular health services. Being on site, and I think what the model and why organizations like ours that have spent, it's what we do, is we know that the model, by providing those services on site, we're better able to address not just the needs of the residents who will make this home, but to address some of your concerns by having people that you'll get to know and being able to answer any questions. And I'm off the road and switching to a computer, so I apologize.
Oh, no, thank you, Carrie. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of finish up the rest of the presentation. So kind of just summarizing what the comprehensive plan amendment is going to look at. Here's kind of a quantification table for the proposal. So we're going to be comparing the adopted plan recommendation of the residential use at 2 dwelling units per acre with the overlay plan with the overlay plan option of the office use of up to 0.25 FAR. And then looking at the proposed plan potential, which would be residential use at 35 dwelling units per acre, with up to the 34 units. And so these are kind of some of the high-level considerations when analyzing the plan amendment for the site that staff are going to be looking at. There was a noise study that was completed for this, and that'll be play an important factor to consider, as well as kind of ensuring residential suitability, given the parcel size, the slope topography, and the site location. And since it's, located along these two busy roads, Route 50 and West Ox Road, buffers and safety will play an important factor into this proposal. And then looking at pedestrian connectivity will be examined to ensure that those living here will have access and mobility to the nearby community serving retail centers, as well as public transportation. And then some other factors, we'll be looking at tree preservation and open space will be a high consideration since the site is currently fully vegetated. And then as well as the vantage points along Route 50, looking onto the site will also be considered. And I know that was also brought up earlier. So along with the different types of buffers that will be put in place for both safety and for views as well. And then kind of, as previously mentioned, one of the considerations is a better pedestrian connectivity to the community retail serving centers and then the transportation options as well. This was also brought up when I presented this plan amendment to the Sully District Council. So staff did walk along Route 50 to that Harris Teeter and that complex area. And there were some sections that were missing crosswalks, making the walk a little bit, a little uncomfortable, especially crossing some of these larger intersections that are highlighted here in red on the map. And then, there's just a zoomed up image of what that intersection kind of looks like and how it's missing those crosswalk sections for pedestrians to kind of feel safe to cross those busy intersections. And then also, so this is like, the current transportation network, and, Fairfax County Department of Transportation is aware of this and they're looking into this as well. And then just kind of looking at a snapshot of the timeline for the comprehensive plan amendment. The next step is that we're going to go back to the Sully District Council to present staff recommendations on February 28th. And then there will be a published staff report in April. And like Lynn was saying earlier, we are anticipating to take this to the May 1st Planning Commission hearing, as well as the May 28th Board of Supervisors hearing. And that'll also give an opportunity for the public to come to also voice to come back and voice, how they feel about it and any questions or concerns as well. So this isn't your only time to, to speak up on this plan amendment. So I'll go ahead. That kind of wraps up the end of the presentation for tonight, but I'll go ahead and go back to those who raised their hands, for further questions and discussions. But just want to leave this up here to please feel free to email me if you have any questions regarding this plan amendment. And then if you have any questions regarding affordable housing throughout the county, to also contact the Redevelopment and Housing Authority. And then last note is that this PowerPoint, along with the recording of the meeting, will be posted on the Cornerstones Plan Amendment website later this week. So if you need any of the information that we went over, look on that website for the PowerPoint and meeting recording. So that wraps up the presentation, but I'll go back and jump into those who have had their hands raised. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to raise your hand. So I'll just jump into Tennyson and then Margaret.
Good evening. We appreciate you all inviting us to participate in this little hearing. Based upon my experience, this looks, sounds, and smells like what most people refer to as Section 8 housing. Section 8 housing brings an undue element to any community that you erect Section 8 housing. I get the whole public hearing thing. But when is this going to be put to a vote? So the citizens of our county can actually decide whether or not we want Section 8 housing right down our street. Thank you.
So,
So
just
Charles,
as
real quick, this is Graham Malone with the Department of Planning and Development. So this is not Section 8 housing. You know, this is permanent supportive housing. It serves a different purpose, different income bracket, provides services. You know, for example, it's more than just an affordable housing project from the county's perspective. And then with regards to your question, I mean, we live in a representative system where we have a board of supervisors that's elected that can make decisions on land use cases. So I'll just leave it at that.
And as Leah said, the first step is this comprehensive plan amendment, which is anticipated to go to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors starting perhaps in May. And then sometime after that, we hope that the rezoning application would be heard. But the first stage is this comprehensive plan amendment.
And this is Supervisor Kathy Smith. You know, Graham said it well, that the final decision will come with the Board of Supervisors. But throughout this process, there's public meetings, there's times for the public to get involved. And then the public hearing in front of the Planning Commission, we'll have a public hearing and people can sign up for that and provide their input. And then once a decision is made, a recommendation is made at the Planning Commission, then it will come to the Board of Supervisors, where we will also have a public hearing and take comments from the public, which at any time people can send us emails or call us or talk to us with their concerns, the things they like. We do want to hear from the public. Thank you.
Next, Margaret, and then R. Henry.
I had put a question in the chat that you mentioned to 24-hour attendant. Is there a curfew for the residents, or are they free to come and go at any time? You say that, is there like a lockdown time that they have to be back in? I'll tell you why I asked this. My mother, my elderly mother, who's 88, was 88 years old, lived in Massachusetts. In her neighborhood, there was a place just like this that was built next to her house, and they had 24-hour attendance. But unfortunately, one of the residents got out and ended up in her backyard, and she was extremely frightened. And we know that you're trying to do good for people, but desperate people do desperate things, and that's why many of us who live in this neighborhood are concerned about how, especially if someone has drug problems, and, we walk all these trails. So that's why when you say there's a 24-hour attendant, what does that mean?
Carrie, are you able to speak to the operational questions like that?
Yes. Hi. I think I'm online now. And again, I apologize for being late to the meeting. No, it's not intended to, lock down. It is an apartment building where people, again, can come and go as they please. But I think that's where, to address your concern, we will know the residents. We will require people to sign in and out. We will know where people are going to be. And I can assure you, again, Cornerstones has been serving Fairfax County for more than 50 years, and we do this because we care about the neighbors. We want to make sure that this is going to work for all of us, and so we'll be looking particularly for seniors and other. We may have some supports for people who shouldn't be out. I'm more concerned about people who can't be out. We plan to have a van to be able to drive people to appointments, to get to the grocery store. It's quite a walk. I think we've seen that on the show. It can be done, but we'll work with people and with you all to share that information.
R. Henry, and then Marwa is next.
Hi, my name is Reggie Henry. And I just wanted to ask, assuming that this project gets approved and goes through to construction and so forth. What is your current estimate as to when this building will begin to be occupied?
Thank you for that question. So, like all affordable housing, we depend on a variety of funding sources, and so that has a lot to do with the time frame, and so the time it takes to gather the resources necessary. But just to answer your question in summary fashion, from the time that, say, the Board of Supervisors approves a rezoning, which would be the last approval, I would expect that construction would start perhaps 18 months after that, and then it might last a year, construction, so that you could say from the time that the Board of Supervisors approves a rezoning, it would be, say, 2.5 years before the folks are able to move in.
And the reason for that is that after the rezoning, Cornerstones will still have to process what's called a site plan, which is kind of the final engineered drawings, showing how everything is addressed in accordance with the county's public facilities manual and everything like that. So that's when Paul says it would take about 18 months. I think that's to get funding sources and also site plan approval completed.
That's right. And building permits and
yes,
be ready to start. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Next, we have Marwa and then Barbara.
Hi. So we wanted to know if this program applies to like low income people because we have 7 more families. We just wanted to know like how many bedrooms are there and if that applies to it. Thank you.
So I think the question was, does this apply or are low income people eligible? And absolutely, this is intended to provide housing for extremely low income people who couldn't otherwise afford to live in Fairfax County. The proposal is for all 33 or 34 apartments to be small one-bedroom units. So again, as we said before, the owner would not discriminate against families, but the physical constraints of the community make it much more suited to single persons.
Okay, thank you.
The last person I see with their hand up is Barbara.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Barbara Davis. I live in the Greenbrier subdivision, which is probably about 1.5 miles away from your site. Criminal activity in our development has increased a lot over the last several years, and it is a major concern. I personally have had my outgoing mail stolen, which is a federal crime. Earlier, you said you do background checks on your applicants. I got the impression you screen for certain offenses, but do you screen for all crimes committed?
Carrie, are you able to answer that question?
Yeah, we do screen for felony offenses, and there's other eligibility requirement, all that are required by the U.S. Housing Urban Development Office and by certain standards for Fairfax County Redevelopment and Housing Authority. If there are misdemeanor crimes or others that show up, and we do have individuals and families that live in our current housing who may have had that in their background. And again, housing stability and working with case managers really allows us to see, folks settle down. So, but we would not be housing folks convicted of those large felony crimes that you're maybe talking about.
So you're selective, in other words.
Right, just like any apartment building, it sounds like you're having issues now. And I think, a lot of nuisance crimes and things that are happening, those are things that we've actually done a lot with the neighborhoods where we work to help address some of those things that are in every neighborhood, right? Some of the things you're seeing. So
no, but we shouldn't have to accept that. I mean, as
right.
residents, why should we have to adapt and change our lives for crimes that's being committed? It's not just that, it's car theft and break-ins into vehicles and packages being stolen. And we're paying our taxes, so why should we have to put up with it? But I could go on that point. But and if you, on the similar line, if you find a resident who has committed a crime while under your housing program, are they evicted?
If they are convicted of a crime and that is the least violation, absolutely. There will be certain things covered in terms of, again, use of illegal substances and anything that would be in any normal apartment lease. I think the benefit to organizations like ours that are working with people, we're landlords that want to be there. We're there to work with the families and we care about the neighborhoods. Unfortunately, in some market rate housing with landlords are absentee, there's not as much attention paid to the folks who are there. That's not what you get with nonprofit organizations and county supported housing that we'll be running.
Okay, and just another question, just to clarify, you're not housing illegals, is that right?
Yeah, all the requirements are based on, again, federal government guidelines, income eligibility, and other things that, make them eligible. So single individuals who are not legally present in the United States are currently not eligible for housing subsidies of the type we'll be providing.
I just personally find that allowing your residents to come and go as they please is a huge red flag. There's just a lot of criminal activity already. So I think the residents here are very concerned. They just absolutely don't want any more. Thank you.
One more hand is raised. It's Mara. Marwa, if you're on the line, you can go ahead and unmute again. Marwa, oh, yep, there you go.
Oh, sorry. We were wondering how much is it to pay per month?
I think she was asking how much it would be per month.
We have not set the final rents. Many of the units would have, if not all, would benefit from rental subsidy so that it would be dependent upon the resident's income. But the general of I'm struggling to answer this without getting too far into the weeds, so I apologize. With affordable housing, we talk about the median income for the county, which, as part of the Washington, D.C. area, the median income for a household of 4 is $142,000. And the financing program that we're proposing to use would mean that we would house people who made no more than 60% of that median income. Actually, these folks would make far less than that. So I guess I would say we don't yet have the final rents established. We do expect there will be rental subsidy available for extremely low income residents. We expect that the rent will be far less than market rent in this area. So that's all we can say at this point.
And then William, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just got, are there any other sites that are being considered for this? You guys seem pretty hot on this site. There's parks that Fairfax County have. Can we use those for
This is the only site in all of Fairfax County that this can be built on?
That's my first question. But
this proposal is tailored to this site. So this is what is being proposed.
so we get back to, just so I'm clear, because I just want to understand totally. Is this a medical treatment facility? Are we going to be treating people for drug abuse, mental illness, alcohol abuse?
So is this
you say handicapped people? You know what? I'm a handicapped person.
But you're a veteran.
But what is the criteria here? Because you've talked around the issue. It's either a treatment facility that houses homeless people, or it's a homeless facility that's souped up to provide all this treatment for people. But why do they need treatment if they're not?
So I would say this is not a residential treatment facility. No, this is an apartment building first.
Mm-hmm.
And every resident will have a lease, as Carrie said, as part of its mission and the services it will provide in addition to housing. Cornerstones will provide services that are needed, and Carrie described it as case management, and that means adapting services for the needs of a particular resident. So it's impossible really to say what services exactly may be provided because we don't know yet who the residents are and what they may need. So the role of case management is to act like a social worker and have a resident connect with the resources in the community or on site that enable them to thrive and to have stable housing and ideally gainful employment. So it is an apartment building, not a residential facility for a healthcare facility.
Right. And I think we're not trying to avoid the question. I'm honest that for people who are living here, there will be people that, just like in the general population, have suffer from mental health issues. There will be people who, just like in the general population, have struggled with substance abuse, and where we can bring services like AA. My brother is a fully functioning drug addict who has been sober for 30 years, and so I've seen the benefit of programs like that, who holds a full-time job. So I'm very familiar with some of the concerns. People with disabilities, this is for a lot of individuals who haven't been able to afford housing, and if they have physical limitations, this is the housing that supports that. And unfortunately, for many people like that in our community who are very low income, they haven't had the resources to be able to be stably housed. And again, being part of this in a small community of up to 34 homes, if this is approved, it allows us to get to know the neighbors, for them to understand how important this gift is of a home, something that most of them have wanted, and to be able to live stably. Cornerstones has many. We have 20 individuals who live in our scattered site programs, many of whom have had those issues, who are now living out, mostly elderly, who are living out and doing really well. And bringing this to this program, being able to continue this is really what we hope to do. And I'm happy to, provide examples.
No, we asked for examples. And you said you didn't have anything like this before. This is the first time you're trying something this big, first and foremost. I think everybody on the phone call understands what it's like to have a house and what a privilege it is to have a place to live. I don't think that's, and that doesn't make them special. And we haven't done this before. So why are we doing it here? If you're only going to provide 36, you guys claim tens of thousands at the beginning part of this conversation. Now you're going to put 36 on a 1 acre lot. You know, why don't you buy a big lot and put 3,000? This is, I mean,
yeah.
You know, and the thing about the treatment facility, if you provide a service that provides treatment, as you guys said you did earlier, that's a treatment facility. I worked in that all my life. Please. Yeah.
I know college graduates who can't afford to live in Fairfax County. It's an issue across the board. I get that. I mean, I was a school teacher for 38 years. I see it, and I know young grads who, you know, they're living at home. We all know what the situation is, okay? And I know that we have a homeless problem, but there have always been, in my view, facilities and help for those who are homeless. They don't have to live in tents. They don't have to live in tents in the woods. I went to Reston the other day to go to PetSmart, and they're in the trees. There's all these, you know, tents and, you know, and homeless people. It doesn't have to be that way. There are plenty of already established places. Some of these people choose that. That's what they want. And it's, who are we to say? And how do you find the 34 individuals out of all the hundreds who are in need?
That are
whoever
homeless,
in need
as
and
you stated.
homeless, and, you know, I mean, yeah, why are those 34? Like, how do you determine who the special 34 are going to be that get the privilege of living in these things? And I also think that it doesn't really matter what we think that live in these communities around here. I don't think our vote or our concerns or our voices are going to matter at all. I think it's a done deal. I think you've opened a can of worms. I think in your minds, it's already done. And I don't think if you have public forums, people can speak what they want to say. And I don't think in the end it will matter one way or the other.
I think.
All right, thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Clerk, this is Graham Owen with the Department of Planning and Development. I did want to just note one thing that these kinds of forums absolutely do, you know, factor into both staff's, you know, thinking on proposals as well as the members of the Planning Commission and the board. So in terms of their, you know, the specific comments that we get, the specific questions that we get, we take them back and when we talk about them with the applicants. So I don't want you to leave here thinking that this is, you know, all for nothing. We absolutely take it seriously. And I would mention, you know, I think Leah had shown a schedule. We'd done a meeting with the Sully District Council. I think it was late last year to kind of introduce the proposal. This is the first community meeting that we're doing outside of the Sully District Council. We will be going back to the council in February, tentatively on February the 28th, to kind of go over some initial recommendations from staff, which we're still evaluating at this point. One thing that's not on here, but I think given kind of the number of questions we've had, you know, great discussion, by the way. I think that on the staff end, we'd like to probably do one more community meeting. Amy had raised a question about notification for her particular neighborhood. So I think we'd be perfectly comfortable with doing a second community meeting following our staff report publication, so we could go over staff's analysis once it's formalized, as well as go over what our recommendations are. And that's in advance of the public hearings that you see on this screen. So I haven't talked with the Cornerstones folks, but I imagine that they would likely assist with that. But I just wanted to put that out there that we'd be happy to do another one because we do take this seriously and we value community input.
Well, and I don't want you to think that we come across that we don't have sympathy or empathy for people who are less fortunate. That is not. Believe me, I've spent my life serving people who are less fortunate than I. And I recognize it, and I thank the good Lord above every day for the blessings we have. But at the same time, I think this is opening a can of worms. I like your idea. I like what it's all about. But I think this location is ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. I think that's just my 2 cents.
All right, thank you.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
So again, that wraps up our presentation. Like Graham said, we'll be looking to schedule another community meeting again to kind of continue these conversations and discussions. But in the meantime, if anything else comes up, please feel free to email me. And I will be, I'll reach out to the applicants to try to get any questions or clarifications for you all. But in the meantime, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and staying through the whole thing. Thank you for the applicants and Supervisor Smith for joining us tonight as well. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting, but please feel free to email me and call me with any questions or concerns that you may have. And thank you all for joining.
Thank you, and thank you for setting this up. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Just one last thing before y'all leave. There is a link to the Cornerstones Plan Amendment website. I just dropped it in the chat, so we'll post the next community meetings information on that website once we're able to. So thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. Good discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.